Hi, my name is Rochelle, and you're watching or listening to BoxBox F1 Pod. Welcome to the Bahrain Grand Prix episode. I am very happy to report that there was action this time. Yay! Not that we necessarily saw the action. It seems like our broadcasting struggled a little bit with camera work. It seems when they saw action, they were like, you know what we should film? Not action. And then panned away. But rumor has it the action happened. So that's what we will be discussing, whether we physically saw it or not. And in case you are watching this episode, you may notice that I am in a new place. I have moved, very exciting, but I only bring that up because I do not have most of my kitchen stuff, which I realized when I planned to start cooking and then realized I could not. So there will be no meal this episode, but hopefully by Saudi Arabia next weekend, I shall be ready to cook up a meal. So with that, let's kick things off with the digital warm-up. Lap 1. All right, F1 news. So, not really news. This is more like continued news from last week. But if you recall, Carlos Sainz received a 10,000 euro penalty for having a stomach issue. He was seen by a medical professional and he was deemed sick, got a doctor's note, and the FIA was like, it's okay. Normally you would have been fined 60,000 euros. However, we shall let this pass and only fine you 10,000 euros for shitting. So that was really nice of them to do. And it turns out Carlos Sainz was 5 seconds late to the national anthem. He was literally not even late. He missed like the first note. It's a little ridiculous, just a little bit. The FIA is generally ridiculous, but this is extra ridiculous. But Carlos was asked about it at the press conference this week, and he said he has like full respect for the national anthem, but also, he takes being on time very, very seriously. However, he was 5 seconds late. The quote, I was 5 seconds late and now I have to pay 10,000 euros. I don't even know if I'm going to get another fine for saying this, but shit happens, no? I don't think he has, or I haven't seen him get another fine for swearing. However, honestly, it was worth it. I personally think, or maybe the FIA was just so impressed by the use of swear word that they're like, we'll let it pass. But how embarrassing, honestly, for Carlos that he had the stomach thing, he had to poop. And not only did he have to get a medical note for the FIA then told everyone that Carlos was shitting himself and was late to the national anthem. He still made it. Also, wouldn't it be more disrespectful to shit during the national anthem? Just a thought. All right, well, that was it for lap 1. Lap 2, off-duty F1. So Christian Horner was, I think, asked about Liam Lawson again, and he said that he didn't just like come up with getting rid of him. The engineering team had been coming up and saying that he was really struggling to fit in with the car and to understand the car and all of this stuff, and it was like the concerns engineer that really drove him to demote Liam back to Racing Bulls. Which is crazy. That's like saying, I have a new corporate job and I've never used Microsoft Word and it took me 2 days to figure out how to use Microsoft Word, and they were like, nah, you're fired. Not that it was, Microsoft Word is significantly easier to use than a Formula One car. So I feel like I get what he's saying, but also we all could have guessed that this would be an issue, considering he's a rookie driving what used to be the best car on the grid that is also designed specifically for one type of driver. Just because he's like aggressive doesn't make him Max Verstappen, you know? So like duty of care, fine, but like they put him in this position to begin with and then went, JK, just whatever. It still peeves me off. Not that I don't think Yuki doesn't belong in this seat, but that's exactly my point. Yuki always belonged in this seat out of these two drivers. So, but like you already chose Liam, so stick with Liam, you know? All right. During one of the fan events, Charles and Lewis were talking about how they were playing chess. Charles started the story. He's like, so we were both in bed and we were playing chess. And then he pauses and goes, well, we were in different beds. He was in London and I was in Monaco, just to be clear. And they're playing online chess and they were tied 4-4. And Lewis didn't want to go to bed with a tie. So they were like, we're going to play again. And Charles was like, Lewis started saying Charles had really good moves. So I decided to look up a bot to help me come up with moves back. And then Charles was like, and I'm watching Lewis make all these good moves. So I look up a bot. And both of them are like going back and forth until all of a sudden Charles goes, are we both cheating right now? It made me laugh. I really want to know, because like my continued running theory is that Charles just forces chess on everyone. I like don't feel like Lewis used to play chess. Maybe he did, and I'm just like completely reading this wrong, but I don't remember ever seeing him or hearing him talk about playing chess. And now they're like literally always playing chess, which I love for them. And I love that this is Charles's number one teammate activity is chess. Throwback to when him and Carlos were playing during the red flag in Spa, just sitting next to each other in the garage. And the commentators were like, oh, classic young people, always on their phones when they can just talk to each other. And they were just playing online chess with each other. But I just find it so fun that this is Charles' like go-to activity with his teammates. All right. James Vowles was doing an F1 Explains video and he was filming it in his office. And the camera, you can see in the camera shot, a head peeking through the door and then backing out and then peeking back in. And it was Alex Albon. And they called him in and he was like, sorry, just like before sessions, I used James's bathroom. And the guy interviewing James was like, oh, don't worry. 10 minutes ago, Carlos Sainz tried to do the exact same thing. And Alex was like, what do you mean tried? He didn't like follow through. And then he was like, all right, BRB, I'm gonna be about 10 minutes. And it was just a funny interaction. But I also lol at the fact that they both go use James's bathroom. And also, why does James have the best bathroom? Shouldn't the driver, is this also, excellent question I just thought of, is that where Carlos was shitting during the national anthem? Because what a story that would be. Also, speaking of shitting and the word and swearing, during the pre-race press conference, Oscar was answering something and then he went to the journalists, wait, do you guys get fined if you swear? And they don't. But it was quite funny. Oh, also, this is not like a story, but this was an edit I saw on TikTok, which I just thought was great, but only if you know what I'm talking about. There is a musical called The Six. I don't know if anyone knows, but it's basically if King Henry VIII's wives were like a girl group, and it's like a concert, basically, and they sing about their story with Henry VIII. And the first song in the musical is like a summary where they're all like talking about their story, and it like gives like a sneak peek. Terrible explanation of a musical, but and it's like how they died. So it's like beheaded, exiled, beheaded, survived. And someone edited the song to the D2 drivers at Red Bull, which is great. And it's them all like basically trying to get back at King Henry VIII / Max Verstappen. Not that I personally am comparing Max to Henry VIII. Don't really think that's comparable, but it's really funny, the context. And then the Yuki is the survived with a question mark, because we don't know if he'll survive. I'm sure he'll survive. Will he thrive? TBD, you know? Anyway, that's just an edit, but it's linked in the show notes. So if you know the musical, suggest go watch it. If you don't know the musical, I suggest you watch it, because I feel like you'll want to watch the musical after you hear the song. At least if you like history, historical fiction, whatever it is. It was a really fun musical. Anyway, Little aside on that, but moving on to lap 3, trackside in Bahrain. Lewis had his curls down and it was very cute. I think the whole time I've only seen him with braids and like a buzz cut or whatever he had back in the day. But he looked great. Drop your curl routine, Lewis. Would love to see that video. Now that you have a TikTok, some great content for you to share. There was a video, there was on the first day, George and Charles wore the same outfit, which was basically just a black t-shirt and white pants. And it just makes me laugh because Charles has the weirdest pants on the grid. Charles really wants to be a fashion girly. I wouldn't say he's he has some interesting choices, particularly the pants. Like I don't know if I ever mentioned, but for my friend's birthday, I got her a t-shirt that just had a picture of all of Charles's like weird pants. If anyone knows the blue, like weird blue combo acid wash cow print jeans. I don't know how else to describe them. The really baggy ones that he always wears. They're really weird ones. But bless him. I'm so glad he tries because then there's people who don't try and I love to see the effort. And then there's George, who is the extreme opposite of that. Do you guys remember that video that Mercedes did the one time they were able to get Lewis to participate where him and George dressed each other for Tommy Hilfiger? And George put Lewis in like a very preppy outfit that was like basically what he wears, and Lewis somehow conjured a streetwear version of Tommy Hilfiger for George, who couldn't keep his pants up, and they looked ridiculous. And someone from behind the camera was like, "You guys look like a boy band. What would you be called?" And Lewis was like, "Wrong direction," because it looked so wrong. And this is sort of what it was giving. I feel like if George saw him and Charles wearing the same outfit, he'd be like, weird, and vice versa, honestly. Just very different styles, but it was funny. The ice baths have made a return, although usually we get that sort of, we get that content usually in Singapore. However, we got an Ollie Bierman bathtub Instagram post, and honestly, I've never seen someone look colder in one of those ice baths. He was clutching his knees to his chest, literally shivering with his whole body. It was rather funny. And I also love when they put little rubber ducks in their little trash can bathtubs. It's so funny. But I guess was it that hot in Bahrain? I guess it was because like George and Lando were like stripping after the race, which I've never seen them strip before in the cool down room. And we've seen some hot races. Like remember Qatar? When they all like almost passed out from the heat. I think some of them did pass out in the car from the heat and continued to drive. That was a crazy time. But anyway, so we saw one ice bath. Maybe I missed some, but I only saw Ollie's. I did this is technically quali, but I just wanted to shout out Lewis's first back at the factory mention, because he said that he was disappointed in his performance and he felt bad for everyone back at the factory. And I haven't heard a back at the factory reference since his time at Mercedes. So thought that was in the past, but nope. We're still shouting him out, the men and women back at the factory. Okay, this was so funny to me. Basically, you know the whole lore with Kimi and math. He's still in school. He has exams coming up. It's very stressful to plan. The podcast he was on a couple weeks ago was like, the guy was like, I bet George is really good at math. You should ask George for math help. And Kim was like, yeah, I will. And so they were doing one of the fan events. You'd think after all these years I'd learn what those things are called. I think it's called fan stage, but yet I don't know what it's called. So when they're on stage and the fans are there, and someone was holding a sign that said, Kimmy, I'll help you with your math homework. And he started laughing. He was like, thank you. I really need it. I really need someone to help me. And then he's like, oh yeah, George, will you help me prep for my math exam? And George was like, what do you mean? And he was like, my math exam. I have a final exam coming up. And George was like, an exam for what? Camille was like, math. And George was like, you're still in school? How does he not know? How does he not know Kimmy is still in school? It's his teammate. Has he not gotten to know him? Like, how is it? George knows everything. about everyone. He like maintains gossip like no one's business, I swear. But like he didn't know his own teammate is still in school. Hilarious to me. I don't know if he was going to help him though. He was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at math. We all know George is probably good at math. But he was just baffled that Kimmy is still in school. And I'm baffled that he didn't know. How is that possible? You see him every day. Although every time I've seen George with Kimmy, George looks slightly exasperated, like an older brother, because Kimmy is just like so much energy. And George looks like he doesn't know what to do with himself. So maybe he's just not asked any follow-up questions to Kimmy. But that was very funny. And I saw a TikTok that was talking about how Isaac Hajar's father he actually comes from a whole family of scientists, but his father is a quantum physicist. Shout out Big Bang Theory. Which is amazing. But someone in the comments was like, someone tell Kimmy that that's who he should be asking for help on his math homework, which is hilarious and probably true. I wonder if Isaac is good at, is it Isaac or Isaac? I'm going to say Isaac until I hear otherwise. I don't think I've heard him say his own name. I'm going to look it up. For now, I'm going to call him Isaac. I'll correct myself next time if that's wrong. But Isaac, I wonder if Isaac's good. Because his parents, if he comes from a family of physicists, judging by my own immigrant family, they would have forced him to study. So he probably definitely finished school. Well, did they all finish school? They just got into F1? I don't know. But he definitely finished school and he must be good at math. Some of that, I mean, I'm not good at math, even though my whole family has math degrees. But Isaac strikes me as someone who would be good at math. So who knows? Maybe Isaac can help him with his homework. Someone help Kimmy with his damn homework. He has engineers. He has a whole team of engineers who could definitely help. He probably doesn't actually need help with his homework, but this is just a funny narrative that Kimmy's like walking around the paddock trying to find someone to help him with his math homework. Okay. Finally, Carlos Sainz Sr. had a little birthday. I think he's like 63, 64. I fully made that up. I actually do not know his age. Please hold. Carlos Sainz Sr. 63. I was so close. He was 62 2 days ago. He is 63 now, and Williams threw him a little birthday party. It was very cute. Alex was there. They had like a whole cake. It looked wholesome and homemade. There was like a lot of chocolate frosting. It looked a little bit like an elevated version of Harry Potter's cake that Hagrid made him, but obviously better. It was definitely larger than the little cupcake McLaren made Oscar. I'm hoping there was something extra going on behind the scenes because all I saw is that tiny little cupcake with no frosting that they shoved in Oscar's face. But anyway, it was his birthday. William celebrated. I love all the Carloses. There's so many of them and I love them all. Carlos Sr., what an elegant old man. Carlos Jr., what an elegant young man. Caco. Remember when Carlos went Caco? Sorry. Okay, moving on. But speaking of Carlos Sr. becoming old, I was just remembering that one time that Ferrari made Carlos, maybe it was McLaren, someone made Carlos do the age filter for a marketing video, and the age filter literally turned Carlos into Carlos Sr. He just looked like the spitting image of his father. It was a little crazy. But yeah, okay, with that fun tidbit, we conclude the digital warm-up. On to analysis. Alrighty. Let's kick things off with quali. Actually, it's FP1. We're going to kick things off with FP1. So Williams got fined in FP1 7,500 euros or 7,000 euros because Alex Albon almost hit his teammate who wasn't Carlos. A guy named Luke Browning was driving for Carlos's car in FP1. And Alex almost hit him, but it wasn't his fault. It was something the team had let him out. It was something to do with the team, but it wasn't really Alex's fault. But the team got fined 7,000 euros. And in the media pen afterwards, he was talking to F1 TV and George was next door and mentioned something and Alex was laughing. And then George was like, did you guys get a penalty? And Alex was like, no, why would we get a penalty? And then the guy interviewing Alex was like, oh no, you guys got a penalty. You guys got fined 7,000 euros or whatever. And Alex looked appalled. He was like, I'm not paying that. I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't my fault. And George was like, at least it's less than Carlos shitting. And Alex was like, what would you rather do? Shit your pants during the anthem or take your teammate out? Obviously take your teammate out. Alex is the funniest person on the grid. Hands down. But it was really funny. All right. Carlos in quali, moving on to quali from FP1 and Alex Albon's banter. The full interaction between him and George is linked in the show notes, by the way. Because I did not give a good rendition of that. It was much funnier coming from Alex's mouth. But all right, moving on to quali. Carlos out-qualified Lewis in a Williams. Woohoo! 3 cheers for me in my head. Then Nico Hülkenberg got his time deleted because I guess he exceeded track limits 45 minutes after he did so. Which is crazy and also annoying for not just him, but everyone else because they canceled it so late, no one knew that they had to redo a fastest lap in order to move forward, which is extremely frustrating. And I just I don't know why they needed that long to review the fact that he was outside track limits, do it on the spot. It's not hard. It's a shame Max Verstappen wasn't around to point it out because he notices everything. They could really use them in the stew room, you know. Also, both George and Kimi got 1 place grid penalty for not following the race director's instructions. They were released into the fast lane before there was a red flag, and they were released into the fast lane in the pit lane before the session restart time had been released, which is not allowed. So that means that from their qualifying positions, George drops down from 2nd to 3rd, and Kimi drops down from 4th to 5th. And then finally, Lando performed not great in qualifying. He, I think, qualified 6th, which not great, but it's not like he was out in Q1. But his post-quali media tour would indicate otherwise. He was moping all over the place. Some of his quotes were, "I've just been slow this whole weekend. Nothing too surprising. I've just been off it. I feel like I've never driven a Formula One car before. I've got nothing to complain about. I'm thankful for the team. I'm just letting them down." You have every right in the world to be a sad boy. They've all been sad. Charles has been sad. Carlos has been sad. Lewis was also sad. He was apologizing to all the men and women back at the factory. They're all allowed to be sad. But I don't know what it is. You're never gonna catch me telling Lando or anyone to be less emotional. I'm a very emotional person. It'd be very hypocritical of me. However, I feel like Lando is in the news every week. He's always saying something to the media that gets misinterpreted, or not even misinterpreted, or maybe taken out of context, or it's literally what he said, but he said it in the heat of the moment when he was really upset or really emotional. It just happens all the time to him. And I don't know if he's just literally unable to process media training, if he doesn't care, if he's not even being media trained. I don't understand what's happening, but a lot of these things are inside thoughts. I love it because I love drama. However, he's shooting himself in the butt. What's the phrase? Whatever the phrase is, I'm going to go with shooting himself in the butt, though I don't think that's the phrase. It's just unnecessary. I understand emotions are heightened, and I understand that F1 drivers, out of all the athletes in the world, seem to do more press than, I think it was Trenton something. He's a player in the Premier League. But he was saying how it was crazy how much media F1 drivers have to do, even right before a race starts. They're doing media and being followed with a camera. And he's we're completely shut off. No one sees us before a game. And all of that is very overwhelming. When emotions are high, like people say shit. It's totally understandable. I just feel like at this point in his career, Lando should be a little bit better at managing his emotions, particularly in the media pen. Even though I always complain when people feel too media trained or too PR-y. But I still think this would be better for Lando in the long run. Being so negative in the press is not beneficial to him or his mental state either. It's not just it being like, because it's in the news cycle. So every time he comes home, he sees all the shit he said when his emotions were high, and that can't be good for his mental health or his self-esteem or any of it. And that can't create a good mindset, and it shows. So he needs to tone it down and be emotional in a safe space so he doesn't have to relive it all the time, because that's what's happening. He has to relive his most like down in the dumps moments over and over and over again because he just like can't control himself when he's in the media pen. So that was kind of insulting, but I mean it in a constructive way. Sorry. Okay, so the starting grid is as follows. Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Pierre, Kimi, Lando, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda, Jack Doohan, Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lance Stroll, and Ollie Bierman. There was a very cute video, I forgot about this in the digital warm-up, but there was a very cute video of Gabriel Bortoleto playing with Nico Hulkenberg's daughter in the paddock. It was very cute. I wonder whose age he's closer to, Nico's or his kids. Okay, moving on to the race. So finally, after 3 races so far, we finally had an interesting race. And yes, Australia was interesting, but it was like its own flavor of drama, where like rain takes drivers out, basically, was the theme. It was so chaotic. It was wild. But this type of drama, this type of action on track is like a proper race. Like, it's not like extenuating circumstances. It's down to interesting strategy, tire management, actual racing. Like, that stuff fueled this race, and it was very exciting to watch. Which a huge part of it was strategy, particularly tire strategy, because I don't think I've seen such tire diversity yet this season, which is crazy. Usually everyone's like basically the same tire except for like one person, and they're always wrong. But it's fun to see people try different things, and it keeps things interesting. Yes, it was still difficult to overtake. There's still a lot of dirty air. The cars are very close, and I know a lot of this is going to change next year once the regulations change, but the strategy is what keeps things moving and interesting and different. And I feel like with strategy in play, we also get to see more of the driver's skills in play, which is always fun. But yeah, the air was still dirty, so it was still difficult to overtake, but there was overtaking happening. Not that we saw it necessarily. In fact, the camera seemed allergic to overtakes. However, they still happened. But we'll talk about the broadcasting in a bit. But just about how we're going to go through this race, I've decided we're not going to do chronologically. I know I used to do the race rhyme, which was fun, but a lot of work. I've stopped doing the race rhyme because it was a lot of work. However, if that sort of recap before I head into analysis of the race is nice, let me know, because I can add it back in. It doesn't have to rhyme unless you guys wanted to. But I can always add like a little recap pre-analysis just to give like a bird's eye view of the race. But anyway, we're not going to go chronologically. I'm just going to go sort of team by team and talk about performance and team performance, and because all the teams were like kind of all over the place today. And there was a lot of crazy stuff happening. So let's kick things off before we head into like the main teams that were wild. We're going to kick off with some of the less interesting teams and sort of chat through their performances and what went well, what went poorly. And then we're going to talk about Red Bull and McLaren. All right, so Ferrari, Charles had a great battle with Lando, and by that I mean he spent half the race fending off Lando's attacks. He was literally fighting for his life. I don't I can't say for sure whether it took so long for Lando to overtake him because Charles was so good at defending, or because Lando was driving so poorly today, or maybe a little bit of both, or maybe neither. Maybe it was just luck. No, it wasn't. It was one or the other, or both. But that was like a huge part also that we didn't get to see. But Lando and Charles fighting, Lando finally overtaking Charles, that was like a whole thing. And Charles was in the top 3, which seemed apparently very difficult for Ferrari to do this year. Who knew? Lewis was fine. I don't know. He got driver of the day. Don't really know why. In terms of Ferrari's strategy, this is a very rare occurrence, so drink it up, guys. But I'm going to defend Ferrari's strategy today. They actually had some pretty good strategy calls. I remember as I was watching, I was like, did Ferrari make a good strategy call? But then there was a safety car, and that was just like a very unlucky, poorly timed safety car that made their good strategy calls kind of moot. So I know there's like, Ferrari's usually wrong, but today they were actually pretty on point. And just luck was not on their side. Because it never is. Because Charles Leclerc is cursed. All right, moving on. Haas. So I think like as long as Haas continues to like not be completely shit, we're all going to be surprised. Because like, what do you mean? Ollie Bierman went from P20 to points. I think he went to P10, but like, what do you mean? How? It's so impressive. Like, a lot of it is Ollie Bierman for sure. The car is like not fabulous. However, the car is better. The car is no longer an absolute piece of shit. And also Ollie's really good. But when he crossed the finish line, he was like cheering. He was like, whoa. And then his dad came on. He's like, hey, Ollie, it's Dad. Good job. And then his brother came on. I think his name is Thomas. And he was like, hey, Ollie, way to go. And Ollie was like, Thomas? Everyone's on the radio today. It was like a whole family affair. It was really cute. And poor Nico had a rough weekend. He went from getting his lap time deleted 45 minutes after. He was probably like in the fucking shower at that point. And then he was disqualified for his plank enduring significant wear. Sounds like an innuendo. But that's like seems to be a theme. There's been a lot of worn out planks recently, specifically Ferrari getting disqualified for the same thing 2 races ago. Was it China? I think it was China. So I think it definitely speaks to what these cars are able to endure in these conditions, especially when everyone's so close to each other, and how much they are working to finish the race. Because I don't know if that means they have to update that rule specifically. If it's happening consistently, there must be something that needs to be changed. But I don't know. Poor Nico, though. All right, Mercedes. Kimi qualified incredibly. Unfortunately, he did not have a great race. George, however, had a phenomenal race. He's honestly just had a great season so far. And he's just kind of always there. He's literally that audio where it's like, it's you and me and you, just us and your friend, Steve. 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 Except it's George. And he's always there. It's basically Oscar and Lando. And then George, like, hello. he's just always bobbing about. And obviously he hasn't won a race yet. And I don't think he's really in contention for the Drivers' Championship, but I do think if he continues to perform in this way, he's definitely going to make the fight much more challenging because he is taking important points away from the title contenders, aka Lando and Oscar. Not that I want to write Max off quite yet, but there's a lot of things working against Max, and Max can only do so much. Is he an incredible driver? 100%. There's only so much he can do. Well and truly only, who my dad always says, like, well, you don't hear like soccer players complaining about the soccer ball. It's like really not the same. The car plays such a huge part in performance. Like, you're not like sitting on the ball. Like, the car is a huge part of it. Because it's a team sport, and the people who build the car are part of the team, and like the pit stops and all of this stuff has to work really well, no matter how good your car is. As we're seeing with McLaren, despite having the best car on the grid, they're still struggling. So again, Max Verstappen, once in a lifetime, not once in a lifetime. We had several people that were like once in a lifetime talents, but like, he's a generational talent. He will go down as like one of the best drivers in F1 history. And that's even with the Red Bull like degrading in quality over time. He is still third. He's literally third. So like, literally all is still to play for. And if there's anyone who can take a hunk of junk and win the Drivers' Championship, it's probably going to be Max. The Racing Bulls struggled a lot today. Liam Lawson received a 5-second penalty and a 10-second penalty for causing collisions with Nico at one point. And then also he had contact with Stroll during the safety car, which, this is not boding well for his career trajectory as it's gone so far. But also, like, if I had gone through what he went through with being like promoted to Red Bull, then being demoted 2 weeks later after 2 days on the job. It's 2 weeks later, but he had like 2 days on the job. I'd be crashing out. So crashing into cars, crashing out, however that manifests, it's happening, and I do not blame him. Like, I think anyone would be struggling mentally. However, I really hope he gets it together, because I don't want his career to just end because of this. I think if he had been kept at Racing Bulls, his career would be in a much better place right now than the way he's been like dicked about. Like, it's just not fair to him. So I really hope he rallies. Alpine was a bit of a mixed bag today. Jack Doohan received a 5-second time penalty for track limit infringements. Everyone was struggling with track limits today, but he got a 5-second time penalty for it. Honestly, whenever I think of Jack Doohan, I just think of that one scene where he's in Flavio Briatore's office looking like he wants to pee his pants. Not wanting to, but like he's about to. And I immediately feel terrible for him. He is not in the best working conditions either. So thoughts and prayers to Jack Doohan. But Pierre, oh my God, Pierre. So bro was in the top 5 for a while before eventually finishing 7th. But like, what a weekend from him. He qualified, was it 4th? Yeah, he qualified 4th. That's crazy work. So he had a great weekend. Alpine is on the up and up for sure. Maybe we'll get the impact of a Ryan Reynolds investment sometime soon, but it's definitely better than last year for sure. Okay, so Williams, my God, my poor man Carlos Sainz. I mean, arguably he was having one of the best weekends bar like Oscar, and then bam, literally bam, because contact with Yuki put like a giant fucking hole in his car, and that is what caused the safety car, because there was debris on the track. Because there was a giant hole in Carlos Sainz's car, like giant, like half the car was gone. But the craziest part, the absolute craziest part, was that Yuki did not get penalized for it. And like Stu, if you're new here, Stu is what I refer to the racing stewards as, particularly when they're being like especially unreasonable and ridiculous, because like in my head, they just form this like singular blob called Stu. But Stu was whipping out penalties left and right today. So why didn't the giant hole in Carlos Sainz's car get penalized? I don't know. Don't really understand it. There probably is a reasonable explanation for it, but there also might be a completely unreasonable explanation for it. It's really one way or the other with Stu. You never know. You never know. But I really hope Carlos's luck changes soon because it's just been a rough ride for him at Williams. It's just gone from bad to worse. And every time you think there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, he gets fucked. So fingers crossed for Will Carlos Sainz. Let's hope things turn around. They almost turned around and then they went back in the shitter. So I will always laugh now when I say shit and Carlos in the same sentence. All right, moving on to Red Bull. Up until today, I really thought it was nearly impossible for Red Bull to have a bad pit stop, especially for Max to have a bad pit stop. However, they didn't just have a bad pit stop today, they had 2 bad pit stops today. Basically what seems to have happened, in addition to them just generally being kind of rough stops, is that their traffic light thing that indicates the color changes from red to green when the drivers can go. It wasn't working, so it just stayed on red. And so I think both Yuki and Max kind of got stuck in their pit stops. Max definitely got the worst end of the stick, but the thing just wasn't working. And everyone's been saying to bring back the little lollipop lady, which is what they call them in England, but it's the little holder thing with the lady just standing there going red, green, red, green. Whoa. No technical malfunction there. So I'm not against that, but it's rough that a technical glitch caused both of them to have such long pit stops. And also Max was pretty pissed off today. We'll get into it in just a second, but I've always said, Max doesn't get pissed off when things are out of anyone's control. He gets pissed off when it's very much in people's control. For example, a bad pit stop. For example, he made a mistake on track. Those things he gets angry about. When it's not preventable or caused by another team or all of things that were not within his or his team's ability to prevent, he is usually pretty calm. But when things are preventable, he's not calm. He gets pretty angry, which I think is fair enough. And a very good evolution from when he just always was mad. So Max is growing. Max is evolving. I will defend Max till the day I die. I'm so sorry. It's my Achilles heel. All right, Yuki. Yuki had a pretty decent race. Christian Horner described it as actually reasonable, which feels actually rude. It just feels really rude. What do you mean actually reasonable? Actually, I think it's pretty fucking good considering the driver you opted into hiring finished in the bottom 5 every time or DNF'd. You know how I feel about him having more time to grow, but that's what happened. I think Yuki did more than reasonable. I think he did great. And I think it's actually fucking embarrassing for you, Christian Horner, because we all know, you know, Yuki knows, Honda knows, everyone knows that was the choice you were supposed to make to begin with. And now you're trying to save face because you made the wrong choice. And that's just something you have to live with, but you made the wrong choice. So, all right, moving on to Max. Every week we see yet again that Red Bull's success is hanging by a very, very thin thread. And that thin thread is called Max Verstappen. The car is shit. Not quite as shit as we probably thought it was when Liam was in the driver's seat, but it's shit nonetheless. And yet Max has consistently dragged that shitty car into the points over and over and over again. And even though he started 7th today, at one point he was P20, I think halfway through the race, and he still managed to finish 6th. From P20 to 6th in less than half the race, that is thanks to literally no one but himself. That's not thanks to the pit stop. That's not thanks to the strategy. That's not thanks to the fucking car. That's thanks to Max Verstappen being Max Verstappen. There were rumors that were actually spread by Ted Kravitz that Max's manager I honestly thought his manager was his father, but apparently it's not. It's this other guy. He was seen by Ted Kravitz yelling at Dr. Helmut Marko in the Red Bull garage. Ted Kravitz said Max's manager came into the Red Bull garage and gave Helmut Marko what can only be described as a piece of his mind. We all know Ted Kravitz hates Max, so I'm sure he's very eager to gossip about Max. But I do appreciate this piece of tea because why is he yelling at Helmut Marko? Like, Helmut Marko deserves to be yelled at. He is an asshole of epic proportions. However, is he responsible for the shitty pit stop? Is he responsible for a poorly designed car? I'm pretty sure he's just a consultant, and I'm pretty sure all of that responsibility falls with Christian Horner. Although, I guess this just proves that it's Helmut Marko running things behind the scenes. Like, we always like talk about like how much sway and control does he actually have? Quite a bit, it seems. If he's the one Max's manager is yelling at, I would say this shines a pretty glaring light at how much control he actually has in that team. And also last year when Toto was very desperate for Max Verstappen, like drooling at the mouth for Max Verstappen. And we were like, I was like, there is absolutely no way Max is leaving Red Bull right now. Yeah, they're not in a great place, but like, they're not in a bad place. And he's not leaving the team he's just won multiple championships with. So while that idea was a little crazy last year, this year, it feels less crazy, especially with how things are going, with Max's position as third in the standings being literally only down to himself. I could see him moving. I don't know where. I truly can't imagine him anywhere else. He's like he is Red Bull. Even though I think he's much better than Red Bull. He's way better than them, but like he is Red Bull in my mind. So like it's hard for me to imagine him in different colors at a different team. There's rumors that it's probably Aston Martin because they're going to offer an like astronomical amount for him, and Adrian Newey's there, and he clearly trusts Adrian Newey. I don't think it's going to be Mercedes at this point, and I don't think it ever was going to be Mercedes. It's just a terrible fit for him. It's not going to be Ferrari. I don't know where the fuck else he would go. Like where is he going? I don't know. Maybe he'll retire. It's just I don't know where else. I don't know. I definitely believe that he probably might not stay at Red Bull unless things drastically change, unless they've got some crazy plan for next year with the new regulations. But I don't know where he's going to go, or if he's going to go anywhere, or if he's quitting altogether. It's a mystery. All right, moving on to McLaren. Lando. Okay, so Lando had an absolutely terrible quali, as we've discussed. Well, it wasn't that bad, but he was acting like it was the end of the world. It was actually rather mediocre. It's okay though. He said, I'm just going to sleep. And then he slept. And it seems like it worked because wow, what a start from him. And like, by the way, Lando is never escaping the reputation of shitty starts. Like that will follow him till his last day in F1. Like once a shitty starter, always a shitty starter. The same way that Max Verstappen was like an unhinged, raging little tween. And in many people's eyes, he remains an unhinged, raging little tween, even though he is not really, doesn't really rage ever. Except for, of course, when he has to wait like 10 seconds for his pit stop. Then he rages, and it's well-deserved. And his raging is more like a respectful peeving. He's just like a bit peeved off. But anyway, speaking of Max, approximately 2.5 seconds after Lando's glorious start, where he found himself in third, even though he started sixth, we find out that he's under investigation for a false start. And how did this information come to light? You think Stu found it? No. Max Verstappen reported it on the radio. Immediately. I think they were still in the starting grid. He's like, Lando's outside of his box. That man should, when he transitions out of his F1 career, he should consider volunteering as a stew. Because, my God, not a thing will go past them. He is meticulous. Nothing escapes him, even when he's driving a car 200 miles an hour. He sees it all. But it ended up costing Lando a 5-second penalty. And yes, Lando finished third in the race. But my God, what a rough fucking journey from start to podium. There were just so many mistakes. And like these were mistakes that I thought, not just during the race, but also like his attitude this whole weekend. I thought these had been resolved during the winter. The first couple of races, he seemed rather cool, calm, collected, but he was frazzled AF this race. Like, he spent half of the race battling Charles when he's clearly got the fastest car on the grid. Why was it so hard for him to pass Charles? It was just, it was bizarre. However, I will say in Lando's defense that despite this, he's clearly driving the fastest and the best car on the grid. It's clearly not that well suited for him. He's obviously struggling with it more than anyone expected, including himself. However, I do think that's only part of the problem. A big part of it is that he still doesn't have the attitude or mindset of a world champion. And that is so key to getting a world championship. Like, the mindset is half of the battle, because like that is what will get Oscar the championship over him. And I really hope he gets together, at least to put on a good show for us between him and Oscar. But truly, the way Oscar's mind works, and like, it might not be Lando's fault. Like he could be just more emotional than Oscar. The way he processes emotions and experiences is probably different to Oscar, who seems abnormally stoic. But that's something he should be focusing on more than his racecraft, honestly, because we all know he's like very fast. He's got raw speed and talent. His mindset is what's going to push him over the edge. So he really, really needs to hone in on that. All right, Oscar. If I didn't see Oscar on the podium, I honestly wouldn't even know he was in this race. Because like, where the fuck was he the whole time? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the world is Oscar Piastri? Plop a red hat on him and call it a day. Like, he was nowhere to be found. Like, no one was even close to challenging him. Yes. Also, we literally never saw him because I'll talk about that in a second. Freaking camera work. But I do quickly want to say it that Oscar is such a vibe. I wish I had his ability to control my emotions and like this calm, cool, collected energy. It's so impressive. It is championship material. That's what wins championships. And he's definitely had a better season than Lando so far. Australian GP aside, his brain is what will win him this championship. Guaranteed. Like, I genuinely think he might win this year. If it's between Max and his shitty car and Lando holding it together, I think it might be Oscar. It might be too early to tell. That might be a little crazy for me to say, because Lando is a great driver and he is very fast, but he really needs to get that mindset under control. And I also hope that McLaren's inability to strategize, but at all, doesn't get in the way of either of these drivers winning a driver's championship. Like, I hope they actually win and not because everyone else couldn't keep up. Like, I don't want McLaren's strategy to hold them back in any way. I want them to be able to win properly. But anyways, 10 out of 10 from Oscar today. Nicole was also very pleased. I don't think she even missed Pilates for this, so that's very exciting. Okay, moving on to the viewing experience. Honestly, I've been so confused these last few races because I just thought I wasn't like paying attention well enough. There were like gaps in like what I was reading versus what I was hearing versus what I was seeing. I kept rewinding, but it didn't seem to help. The graphics didn't make sense to me. I physically didn't see some of the things they were talking about. And I just thought I was like literally spacing out and missing stuff. And I was extremely confused because I was like dead on watching the whole race. And I'm like, I don't understand what I'm missing. And it was this race in Bahrain when I realized I was just being gaslit. Or gaslighting myself, or being gaslit by the television. Gaslight is definitely not the right word, but I'm going with gaslit. Because I was blaming myself, but really the broadcast was shit. First of all, I don't know if it's Sky News or F1 TV, but like whoever you are, I hope your boss Red Bulls you. I hope you get Red Bulled and demoted to somewhere far, far away from decisions about camera direction, about graphics. Whoever, all the people responsible for this, go away. Because like, what on earth has this viewing experience been? It's crazy. Because like, as soon as I started looking online, I finished Bahrain and I'm like, I'm tripping even more. Like, I was like, am I losing it? Do I not care anymore? That I'm missing all this stuff? I really started questioning myself and like I was like, what is going on? So it turns out, first of all, let's start with the camera work. Like, it's almost like they were told, if you see a good moment coming, pan away. Do not show the viewers an overtake, a battle, crossing the finish line. That's irrelevant. Show them nothing. When Oscar, when Carla, oh my fucking God, when Charles and Lando were battling, they literally, as soon as they got like wheel to wheel, they moved away. They started showing something completely irrelevant and boring. It was so bizarre. As soon as they got wheel to wheel, it just panned away. And then we found out that Lando overtook Charles. Okay, thanks for letting us know. They also never showed Oscar crossing the finish line on like the main screen, which feels rather rude and disrespectful to Oscar's win. Like, fine, nothing was happening with him during the race. We never saw him a single time, but at least show him crossing the finish line after he did such a stellar performance from beginning to end. At least show us that. Just like, I don't remember it ever being this bad in all my time watching the sport, which granted, not that long, but I feel like I'm watching in like the 90s or the 80s, or like, I not now. Like, I don't understand. Like, the commentators are saying something is happening and I'm staring at the screen and it's not happening. I'm like, what are you saying to me? It's not happening. It was a little crazy. But like, what perhaps is even worse than the camera work were the graphics and the live times on the screen. And by that, I mean, there were none. There were no live times. Like, halfway through the race, they just stopped showing the live times. I believe what happened, now that I've investigated and realized I'm not going crazy, was George began to have issues with his transponder. The transponder is basically the thing on each car that connects to the radio tower. And that keeps them connected to the pit wall, and it keeps them connected to the broadcasting. So like they know the live times of everyone and keeps tracks of all the car and keeps that thing updated. But because his transponder was not working, he was like jumping all over the screen to different grid positions. So they were like, let's just turn the whole thing off. So we saw no live times, which is rough because it turns out I stare at those things a lot. And now I don't know where anyone is. It's not being updated accurately, if someone's overtaking or not. It's like very confusing. I just like, if one person's bouncing around, they could literally make a note of it or tell us out loud that like, by the way, George is not being picked up by the radio tower. So like, he's going to bounce around, but everyone else is accurate. Nope, not doing that. But like, another thing that happened because of this is George was being investigated after the race for opening DRS at the wrong time when he had no DRS, but he opened it anyway. And as it turns out, this is also connected to the transponder because since this transponder wasn't working, there's another button that will manually connect him to the radio. And he was instructed to hit that in order to stay in communication. So he hit it, and turns out this button is also a manual DRS activation button. So he accidentally turned it on, but then immediately turned it off and like didn't actually use it. He like immediately slowed down. And I just feel like, why would you make a button with two purposes? Why would one button do two things that are not relevant and like just do two different things? Like, why would a button connect him to the radio and turn on DRS? That is a crazy thing. Were they run out of space? Like, were they trying to be more efficient? Because that seems stupid to me. That does not seem smart. I don't understand why a button would have a dual function. It's very weird. Anyways, all this was a disaster. And it wasn't just that. He was also having brake issues. Basically, the fact that George finished P2 is crazy to me because he had so many technical issues, just nonstop, just so many issues. But he didn't get penalized, by the way. So he finished P2 and he stayed P2. But anyway, the issue with George is not the only thing that's been causing like issues with the graphics. They've just generally been really weird since the start of the new season. They updated everything. So like, and there's no like guide to understand the new graphics. Things just look different. For example, when they're like focusing on one driver, they'll highlight him in red, which is weird because that looks like a red flag. So like use the team color or use like yellow, not yellow because that's also a flag, but like use something else, so it doesn't look like they're like red flag. Then they start adding all these exclamation marks in different colors, and I don't know what those mean either. Maybe I'm just stupid and everyone else figured out what the exclamation marks mean, but like, I feel like there should be some guide. They should have released some sort of guide to help us understand the new graphics that they've put out, which are supposed to be to help us understand what's going on. And if they don't explain them, how are we supposed to know what's going on? But like also just besides the new graphics and like getting accustomed to things meaning different things, it's just been consistently inaccurate, which is weird and like kind of embarrassing for an organization of this caliber. Like, please get it together and step it up. They could really use Christian Horner and Helmut Marko's like trigger happy process of like getting rid of people who aren't doing their job. Like, this is important. This is a huge part of the viewing experience and what keeps people tuning in and how they get their money. So like, do better, please. This was one of the best cool down rooms that I think I've seen in a while. Lando immediately leads with, pretty easy race, all calm, everything under control, which made me laugh because Lando most certainly did not have anything under control. Then it pans to George, who's literally just stripping in the middle of the cool down room. His suit is off halfway. I think he was taking off the shirt underneath. I didn't realize it was that hot, but there was like a lot of stripping going on. And they're watching the race and they're all commenting. And at one point, Lando points to the screen and goes, "Who's that?" And Oscar goes, "What do you mean, who's that? That's you." And George goes, "You muppet." And Lando goes, "Okay, mate." It was very funny interaction, great analysis. Someone pointed out that the Max Verstappen podcast might have a new host named Oscar, and I fear they might be right. Also, in the post-race press conference, George, in between, I guess, the podium and the post-race press conference, had posted an Instagram post about winning, which I feel like since he was under investigation, he probably could have held off, considering he's made that embarrassing mistake before when he got disqualified from Spa. Not that they showed that on DTS, but when he got disqualified from Spa, he had already posted on Instagram. And then he was like, he had to make like a correction post to be like, "Oh, didn't actually win it, my bad." But he posted it like immediately. And one of the pictures was Lando sitting on the floor in like his socks, also like no top on. I just really didn't realize it was that warm. Why were they all stripping? But like so in the post-race press conference, he's like in the middle of answering a question, and then there's just like a cackle from Oscar and Lando, because I guess they went on their phones while George was answering the question. And George was like, "Oh yeah, I posted that." And Oscar was like, "George really did Lando dirty." And George goes, "The ladies will love that." He like did it away from the mic so no one could hear, but we could all see his mouth moving. So we all knew what he said. It was really funny. But also during the post-race press conference, one of the local journalists asked what it meant to McLaren to win in Bahrain, which I think is the first time they even podiumed in Bahrain. And Bahrain is obviously very important to McLaren because they are partially owned by important people in Bahrain. I think the Crown Prince is an owner. They've been pictured with them before. Like when Lando won his first race, they showed Zach giving him the phone to talk to the prince. And so they both were talking about how they were like really happy to win in Bahrain and how it means so much. And Lando was like, to win for the Crown Prince and to win for all these people, it just means a lot. And then he went, and it's just so nice to win in Bahrain, which is like just like a very like small, cute little country. It made me laugh so hard. He described Bahrain as a cute little country. Literally, Lando describing Bahrain as a cute little country Reminds me, I don't know if anyone here watches The Bachelor, but when Joey was The Bachelor, they went to Malta, and in his interview, he was like, I really love Malta. It's got this like old school vibe. Like, it was a European city. It was very funny. But anyway, moving on to results. The driver of the day was Lewis Hamilton, which like, what? Maybe the driver of the day is broken like the rest of the graphics and the tech powering F1 TV, but he didn't have like a bad race, but like I think he went from like P9 to P5, which like great for you, but like was that the best performance today? No. I thought Oscar was so good we couldn't see him. He was that far away. So 10 out of 10 for him. Charles was defending against Lando's non-stop attacks for like half the race, which again, not quite sure if that was Charles's great driving or Lando's very bad driving, but he did that. Carlos was having an insane race before he DNF'd. But other than that, great race, great weekend. Ollie Bierman went from 20th to 10th in a Haas. As a rookie, definitely deserves at least a shout out, if not honorable mention, if not literally driver of the day. It deserves driver of the day. Max Verstappen ended up in 20th halfway through the race and then finished 6th. Also crazy like turnaround. But Lewis went from 9th to 5th, so let's celebrate that. They've been really bizarre. I understand Yuki winning in Japan because like it's his home country, but still a little bizarre. The rest of them have all been crazy. Like, why did Kimi win in China? Everyone was confused. No one understood. The Dick in the Box is the tech team at F1 and whoever's in charge of media in general. Get your graphics in order, get your timings in order, get your camera work in order. Literally, that all needs to be fixed. It's like one of the most important things to do. Literally out of everything, get your shit together. All right, so the results are as follows. Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Ollie Bierman, Kimi Antonelli, Alex Albon, Isaac Hadjar, Jack Doohan, Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, Lance Stroll, Gabriel Bortoleto, and then Carlos Sainz DNF'd, and Nico Hulkenberg, who was originally in 13th, was disqualified. The standings are as follows. Lando Norris with 77, Oscar Piastri with 74, Max Verstappen with 69, George Russell with 63, Charles Leclerc with 32, Kimi Antonelli with 30. Way to go, Kimi. Lewis Hamilton with 25, Alex Albon with 18, Esteban Ocon with 14, Lance Stroll with 10. How is Lance Stroll in the top 10? Sorry, side note. Aston Martin has literally just like not existed this season. I barely noticed them, even though Lance has consistently done pretty okay, other than, today. But he's like enough to be in the top 10. Also, what's going on with Fernando? I know he didn't finish the first 2 races, so only has like 1 race, and this 2 races under his belt now, but like, is he finally losing his touch? Or is the car really shit? Will he stick around through Adrian Newey? Only time will tell. The constructors are as follows. McLaren with 151, Mercedes with 93, Ferrari with 57, Haas with 20, Williams with 19, Aston Martin with 10, Racing Bulls with 7, Alpine with 6, and Kick Sauber with 6. Very impressive. Everyone has points. Do you remember how I think 2 teams had 0 for like 90% of the season last year? Kick Sauber had 0 for sure. All right, well, that's it for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Next up is the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which hopefully my kitchen will be a little better stocked and I'll be able to cook. That's coming up in just a few days' time because I think it's been a triple header that just was not announced. I'm pretty sure we had, or is it a double header? It was a double header. Never mind, I'm being dramatic. Everyone cross your arms and legs and anything else that will cross, that we get a thrilling race again. And it's not boring like the last 2, but it's been very refreshing to have an interesting race. But anyways, I will see you guys very soon. Make sure you follow, subscribe, share with any potential boxes, and make sure you follow along on social at BoxBoxF1Pod to keep up in between races. And you can always DM me with any thoughts, meal ideas, questions, just to chat. I'm here. But anyway, see you guys this Sunday. Box.